This assignment is going to involve painting a yellow specimen. I have chosen this yellow lily because it has several aspects to it that we can use for painting yellows. If we look closely at it, you can see this bud has several kinds of yellows. It has a greenish yellow, which is a yellow with a green bias, and then it also has an orange biased yellow along the edges of the center fold here. You'll also see some orange bias in the petals as well as some green biased yellows. And then we have to deal with the stamen, which have very similar colors to the petals. We're going to have to use Maskoid in order to separate them from the petals while we are painting. So that's how we're going to begin. Once you've decided on the viewpoint for your painting, the next thing to do is to start your drawing. You can start with a quick sketch and get everything in position, measuring sizes to make sure everything is in the same proportions in relation to one another. And then once you've got a good sketch, you can overlay this and create a good pencil. From which to transfer your work. It is very important to make sure that you have all of your details accurately recorded so that you are not making changes when you transfer this drawing to your good watercolor paper. Now that my initial line drawing has been transferred onto good paper, I am now going to take a 4H pencil and I'm just going to lightly go back over those lines again, making sure that the contours I have on here are exactly what I want them to be. And if there's any minor change, I have to make it at this time so that everything is exactly the way I want it to look in the final painting. Now, as you can see, the pencil line has gotten darker because I've added another layer. But we will erase the transfer line once we're done with this second step. I have a leaf here where the original traced line went right along the edge of this leaf in this folded leaf in the front. And I felt it was going to be confusing for the viewer because they would think that this leaf was attached to this leaf. So I'm making a slight adjustment based on what I see in front of me in terms of the real piece, the real subject itself. So I'm going to make those changes here. And I'm going to eliminate this line which ran across the top. And now that I've pretty much traced off all of the transfer lines, I can now go in and gently eliminate those transfer lines. And now this leaf looks a little bit more logical in terms of its placement in relation to this other leaf. So this leaf now will come down like so, and then this leaf in the front will be independent, visually independent of the one behind it. And it's those kinds of things that you need to look for as you are working when you redo this drawing on the good paper. And when I say redo the drawing, is you're looking at the original specimen, you're looking at your photograph, and seeing where you might have to make changes in order for the drawing to make more sense. So now I'm going to erase all of the transfer lines and just leave the number 4 pencil line that I had used to refine the drawing before I start to paint. I have taken several photographs of this specimen so that I have a reference for shadows. The color is always determined from the actual specimen itself, but it's easy to drop in your shadows based on a photograph. Remember also that your subject is going to change if you have to paint over several days, and as long as you have the photograph to cross-reference, you should be able to work back and forth between the photograph and the real specimen in the process of painting this subject. But there are several things that we have to take into consideration before we begin. One is protecting these pistil and stamen so that we can paint the petals behind it in full strokes rather than painting little spots of paint in between these lines. So we want to mask these off before we start. The other thing we might want to do is think about what's got to be painted first and what's got to be painted second. For instance, here on this bud, we have a leaf behind it, but we really want to paint that whole leaf as one unit. So we may want to maskoid out this area and then paint this leaf. There might be other areas. For instance, maybe we want to mask out this leaf here, which is in front, so that we can paint the peduncle of the flower rather than painting here and then painting here. If you can make the stroke all the way through, you know that your color is going to be consistent on both sides of that leaf. We can then lift the maskoid off and paint the leaf. So those things that are in front sometimes get masked in order to paint something behind. We may also want to put some maskoid here in this section of this bud so that we can paint this whole petal as one unit as well. So there are strategic things that need to be considered before you actually put paint on the page. The other thing that we need to do is we need to establish our colors. And for that, we need to take our original subject matter and do some test swatches, which is what we will do next. At this point, I have chosen and mixed the colors that I think I need for this lily. So we can put this lily next to it, and we can see that this is my leaf color, and it will also be stronger if I add another layer of color here. But you can see it's very close to what I need for the color of the leaf. Now I can add more Winsor Violet to it if need be, but that will be down the line. If I look at the underside of my flower, these areas here are really close to the shadow color that I need, and that's going to be cadmium yellow pale, Winsor lemon, and neutral tint. So this is going to be my shadow color. And again, if we add more layers of color, that shadow color becomes richer. The local color for the main petals themselves is really a combination of cadmium yellow pale and Winsor lemon. So those are my basic colors. Now I may add more color to these as we go along. So these are the colors that I need for this composition. There's not an awful lot of variation. We're limiting our palette to a very small number of colors. This doesn't take into account the color for the stamen, so we need to mix that as well. And that's going to be some neutral tint and some burnt sienna. So this is going to be the stamen. So now that we know what our colors are, you need to mix up enough of this so that you don't have to remix, and so that you have enough that if you want to create some sort of variation on these colors, and that way you will be in good shape to paint your entire painting.